Panel, is the speaker audible and visible?
Yes to both.
All right, so I'll start my speech in 3. Let me set up my timer. 3, 2, 1. The world of outside opposition is a world where you believe that you are a puppet of the universe. Whenever you make a choice, it is not yourself, but the inscrutable overarching plan having you what to do. It is impossible to ever feel control, hope, pride, or meaning in your life because you are merely a part of a slave to that plan. That's a world we cannot live for in proposition. Now, what is our counterfactual? We support a world where people believe that they have the power to shape the world and to change their current reality. They have to control over their actions and that there is hope that they can make their lives better. Now, I would like to pose my first argument. Why is there substantially more nihilism on side opposition? Well, on side op, people believe that all of their actions are determined by things beyond their control, that they are just pawns in an overarching plan, which means that they will perceive all of their choices being constrained by that plan. This is likely to lead to nihilism for 2 structural reasons. Firstly, a lack of control, a feeling of lack of control over your own fate and your own destiny. You feel like you're not a separate person, but you're just a blob in the universe and your choices are predetermined. But secondly, you don't feel like you deserve any of the positive things that you've gotten in your life. Did you really win the competitions because you train hard, or were you just randomly designed to be more smart? You feel very removed from your own accomplishments, which are often vital in including a sense of purpose. Now, what are the impacts? Well, there's twofold. Firstly, individuals are likely to experience mental duress or on a daily basis, being in a cycle where you tell yourself that you are unable to control things. This leads to a crippling sadness. Even though that sounds more trivial, this argument should be weighed highly because it has a massive impact on the psyche of billions of people around the world, especially on certain people who require a sense of hope, people who live in poverty, who need to believe that they have the capacity to change their own circumstances. But secondly, this will also impact your actions. When you think that your choices are predetermined, you are going to be less likely to try new things and potentially attempt to change the course of your life. So if you're suffering from an addiction, you might be less inclined to get help. So what does side opposition have to trade off? Well, first, a sense of hope. You strip away the hope of the poor to believe that one day their life can get better and they can experience what meat tastes like. You strip away the hope of poor parents thinking that sending their child to school will better their family needs. You spit on their face and say, no, you cannot be better. You are born poor and that's your fate. You are just a pawn. We say this is disgusting. We cannot stand for that on pop. Now, second, it also disincentivizes people to get help. People who got addicted, you tell them that this is never going to change. And third, it makes people less fulfilled. Even when people win on your side, they don't feel like it's a result of their own labor. That's the point when you strip away people's ability to feel happiness. Now, my second argument, why do we get better social justice movements? Well, firstly, on our side, the notion that you can shape the world is vital to the narrative that social justice movements use to further advocacy. The belief that you should protest because things are just able to get better. Well, environmentalist campaign is always that you should stop polluting the environment because it can change the trajectory of the climate change. Labor unions campaign is always we should organize into labor movements because you have the capacity to change your own circumstances. Under their side of the house, individuals are far more likely to believe that bad things are bad and they're going to continually be bad. That's why you create chilling effects for social movements. You damn minorities' life because there's just less advocacy surrounding minority causes. But secondly, though, harmful social hierarchies are likely to also continue on opposition. These hierarchies that exist on the basis of gender, on the basis of race, and things like that. On their side, they perpetuate the narrative that this overarching plan chose you to be on top of that hierarchy. And given the historical influence of religion, which is probably going to be even stronger in a world where we believe in an overarching plan because God is funding everything that's happening and that God put us at the top of the hierarchy. Now, third, there's also going to be lack of check and balance on their side. You can't refute the idea that God bestowed someone with a unique kind of moral value that places them on top of that hierarchy, meaning that things like feminism and the Black Lives Matter movement that dismantle these kinds of hierarchies are going to be a lot more difficult to implement. And this is why we firmly believe on side prop. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. To proceed with the opposition case, may we now have the leader of opposition here.
Yes. So, may I start my speech now?
Yes.
All right. So, before I start my speech, so I'd like to before I start my speech, I just like to specify that I'll take POIs verbally, and that, yeah, my pronouns are he. I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. So first of all, as proposition, we have a few things to explain. That starting with our first of all point is that we believe in the power of groups. Yes, we believe that if we work together, just like the proposition, we believe that if we work together, we can achieve great things. And through achieving great things, what will I say? Through achieving great things, we can own. That's only how we can change the world, by working in groups. But the thing is, we'd like to explain our first argument. First argument being is that the unrealistic nature of their side of the world. They say that they will give the mindset that everyone can do. They'll give the mindset to rich people and poor people alike that they will believe. They'll believe and they'll think that they have the power to change the world. However, believing that you have the power to change the world and giving them the power to change the world is not the same thing. Rather, it's quite the opposite, and does the opposite too. I'll be explaining why. Because will does not equal to capability. And though will can increase your capability, I believe will can be attained. It has to be attained, not given to people. Telling them that you can do this, blah, 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 is not the same as telling them you can't do this. And they from their heart will have to believe that they can do this. This is how, this is the exact situation that occurs before any independence war in history, before any sort of revolutionized movement, because we as humans have this ego that we have to prove ourselves. And to prove ourselves, we will not listen to society. We will rebel. And that's our nature. And because of this, we will essentially be able to function better in a world where the narrative is that there's this inscrutable plan going on, in which we're mere pawns. Because fact is, diamonds can be made without pressure. And what you're doing in your world is essentially giving these people an ego bubble, making them think that they can do anything what they want. Right? This gives them the ego bubble makes them, they can't cooperate with each other. They'll persist so much on their mindset because, for example, let's say at the firm belief, they believe that the sky is red. Now, since they think they have the power to change the world, they will have no matter what, it will be very hard to change their opinion on what color the sky is. This is just an example. So it will be very hard to change their opinion because they believe they have equal capability. And having the equal capability, believing that you have the equal capability and actually having the equal capability are two very different things. So the non-cooperation in their world, which will logically happen, right? Which will theoretically and logically happen if their motion was put into place, is not in our world. Whereas in our world, where we tell them there's this inscrutable plan is going on, what essentially will happen is groups which share interests, groups which have a main goal, they believe they think that they don't have a. First of all, I'd like to explain that these aren't God gifts, right? These aren't God given. The motivation you get from society. Society makes you, and though God creates your body, God creates your body, He has also made society. Because God, for example, in the United States, do you think someone will just be born and will say, I want to revolutionize the USA because I'm so smart and cool? No, because in the USA, if they feel oppressed, what's essentially going to happen is they're going to want to prove themselves. They want to improve society. And that's what's going to happen in our world. Our world has so many uncalled for benefits and things that cannot be seen in hindsight. But it's true. Our world goes deeper and deeper into the moral human psyche, right? Essentially, what's happening in the end is that everyone is benefiting and the world will change faster through the cooperation of everyone, which is not happening in their world and will never happen due to common sense. Because the more you increase someone's ego, the more they will believe that they don't have to listen to others and they will just act as rebellious teen for the rest of their lives, like entirely. And what my second speaker and third speaker will do is expand on my points and provide rebuttals for your processes. That's why we take this debate. Thank you.
I thank the previous speaker for that speech. To proceed with the government case, maybe now the Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Panel, am I visible and audible?
Yes to both.
All right, thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it. All right, so let me just quickly set my timer. All right. Educators ready, opposition ready. My time will start in 3, 2, one. I'll first start off with some strategic callouts. Now, let me just preface this. Everything that side op stands for falls under one simple notion. They don't understand the spirit of this motion, causing a weirdly lined debate where there's just a gray area boundary that they cherry pick the benefits on our side, which we're supposed to be debating about, and take it to their side. This is hilarious, considering the fact that the literal leader of opposition blames us, the government side, for an unrealistic view and unrealistic nature of the world. Opposition, it's simple logic that we can't change the color of the sky to suddenly be red. It's simple logic that people can't start a revolution just randomly. Let me define this one last time. Since my PM's definition did not cut through opposition's case. The narrative that you can shape the world does not mean that you are Superman. It simply means that you can shape your reality and your own circumstances, that you can change, that your fate is not predetermined. I couldn't break in my previous debate competitions, but now I stand here in the finals of the competition not wanting to believe that my destiny was to be a loser. This is exactly the world that our side stands for, a world in which we believe that you can improve. Whereas on opposition side, that notion simply doesn't exist. Let me go on to more explicit rebuttals. The first major point that they brought up is that there's a lack of cooperation. It's also hilarious considering the fact that on their side, they told you that revolutions can happen out of nowhere. There are three structural reasons to disprove this. First and foremost, there won't be a lack of cooperation. Why? Because the people, quote unquote, predestined to be of the higher social hierarchy, for example, the rich ones, the smart ones, they won't want to integrate into the society with people labeled as criminals, poor, or stupid. That's the simple nature. That's why there's a lack of cooperation on their side. What is the counterfactual on our side? Why is there more cooperation? First and foremost, we tell you that since people can change, it will incentivize people to seek help. For example, drug addicts. In status quo, many drug addicts feel like they can't change, that they cannot move on from this phase of life. But we tell you no. We tell you that through our notion that you can shape your world. We tell you that these drug addicts are able to rehabilitate, they can be better, and they can be not addicted to these hard class type A drugs. This is the type of world that we stand for, a world of improvement where people cooperate each other to be the best that they can be. Next, we'll tell you that actually, considering the fact that they brought up regarding revolutions, how on their side, revolutions will not happen. Simply put, on our side, there's better social justice movement. This has been mentioned by my PM, but let me preface this once again. On their side of the house, individuals are likely to believe that the bad things are bad and they are continuously going to be that. That's why you create a chilling effect for social movements. So it's hilarious considering the fact that they brought up revolutions, whereas on their side, these revolutions will not happen in the first place. Let me move on to my game-winning extension. Why do we get better criminal justice system? First, we get better rehabilitation. In ops world, you see criminality as something that is linked to oneself, that you are predetermined to be evil, and therefore there is very little that we can in society that we can do for you. On ops world, a criminal remains a criminal. As a consequence, people's response is not going to be a positive one. If we can't make these people not a criminal anymore, then we just lock them up for the remainder of their life. No, under the narrative of change on our side, this is different because we believe that individuals are capable of changing. It's valuable to invest in rehabilitative resources because you are not doomed forever to be a criminal, which is actively good because we get less punitive justice system, which disproportionately impacts certain people, and we actually provide the resources for people to get better outcomes, ladies and gentlemen. Secondly, we are likely to have more mitigatory sentences on our side. Under status quo, there has been a massive push for things like the mitigatory sentence requirements based on backgrounds, under the narrative that if you are born into poor communities, you might be less morally culpable. Their side of the house says no one is morally culpable, and therefore you cannot get distinction on the basis of relevant differences in moral culpability. You are more likely to just lock everyone up for longer periods of time. Even less privileged people have more control over hierarchies. Hence, I've never been prouder to stand government on this debate. Thank you for your time.
I think the previous speaker for that speech to proceed with op, may we now have the DLO. Here.
Can I get 30 seconds?
DLO, can we proceed?
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
All right. Just before I start my speech, my pronouns are he, him. I'll take my POIs verbally, please. So yeah, having said all of that, I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. So as the second speaker for opposition, let me just make something clear, right? We agree to the fact that our world, that not everyone will have the same power in our world. However, how is this a good thing, right? This brings up the concept of reverse psychology. What does this mean? This means that, yes, if people do not have the same power in the world, then this will actually motivate the people who want to make changes to this world to make proper changes. They will uptake the proper roles of leadership. If we give everyone extreme power to represent whatever they want in the world, then do you think you can separate the proper people who want to make actual definitive changes to the world than just random lazy people who just want to flex their powers, right? The world isn't sunshine and rainbows, and you won't understand that ever if you have that in your world, right? The scope of change by individualistic efforts are so tiny that it can be considered just individual success rather than shaping the world. Shaping the world itself, right? This term requires much higher levels of initiative and outcomes, and you guys have not said anything about that. Let's move on to our arguments now, having said those rebuttals. The first thing we're going to talk about is collective action. Emphasizing individual power can sometimes hinder the necessary cooperation and coordination needed to address these global challenges. Some issues such as climate change or global poverty or natural disasters or epidemics, whatever you name it, these require collective action rather than relying solely on individualism or individual agency. The world is interconnected, okay? And actions in one part of the world have far-reaching consequences elsewhere. These interconnectedness underscores the importance of considering broader systems and cooperations, right? Having said that, I'll move on to another argument, which is the recognition of limitations. Again, this brings me back to the term ego bubble, right? We, the opposition, can argue that recognizing the limitations of individual agency and acknowledging the existence of broader forces or plans does not diminish the value of individuals. If you think of it, it's a realistic perspective that accounts for the complexity of the world and the interplay of multiple factors, right? This also will avoid individualism because overemphasis on individualism can reinforce a mindset where personal success is prioritized over collective well-being. So yeah, let's talk about collective well-being. Everyone wants everyone wants to think about themselves, right? However, there are some guys in this world who want just not best for them. They want what's best for their people, for their country, for their world, right? Therefore, if you give everyone a very high power, right, and if you give them the power to shape the world, so-called, in shaping the world, right, do you think that they will think of the earth, or will they use will they use their power to just benefit themselves, right? Therefore, our world, where everyone plays a role in an overarching plan, it allows a more realistic perspective, right? All you guys have realistic expectations. And let me just talk about a rebuttal that the second speaker from side proposition had talked about. He kept on talking about drug addicts and criminals and people who are so-called locked up, right? However, these criminals and drug dealers and whatever, they want to shape the world. Of course they want to shape the world, but they shape it negatively, right? We do not want this. If we want to live in a negative world, do what side proposition says. This, in their case, they're just saying that if they commit crimes with the power they have, then it's a very stupid idea, right? It's a very silly idea, and we are completely against this. Therefore, as the second speaker of the opposition, what have I given you? Excuse me, I have given you all of the arguments that our side has proposed. I've also rebutted the speech. I've also rebutted some of the arguments that the proposition had said, and finally, my third speaker will expand more on this, and he will finish the speech. He will finish our case off, and we as side opposition are proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. Now let's proceed to the third speaker coming from proposition side. Here.
Chair, panel, am I visible and audible?
Yes to both.
Okay. Well then, let me set up my time. Wait, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. OPP says that there will be a notion that people need to prove themselves. There are two structural reasons to disprove this. First is that pressure is not inherently bad. For example, social justice movements, which is much higher on our side, needs to pressure the government for more legislative changes. Now, secondly, pressure is actually a benefit only offered by our side. This pressure incentivizes people to improve from their current circumstance. Without the feeling of pressure, people would have no desire for improvement, and they could just easily blame it on the world. Now, moving on to my rebuttals. Now, they said that legislative policies will be done. Now he even the previous speaker made the previous opposition speaker even said that the world is not sunshine and rainbows. Yes, we never agreed and the world is sunshine and rainbows, but we don't want to make the world one that is all depression, sadness, and inequality, where people have a lack of control, of hope, and peace within themselves. This world is one that the opposition supports. Now we have preempted this point and even proved why legislative policies will not be created since our PM speech. He told you three structural reasons why this will happen. Firstly, the notion that you can shape the world is vital to the narrative that social justice movements use to further advocacy. The belief that you should protest is because things are able to get better. Under their side of the house, individuals are far more likely to believe that bad things are bad and they're going to continually be bad. That's why you create a chilling effect for the social movements. Now, but secondly, though harmful social hierarchies are likely to continue on opposition, these are hierarchies that exist on the basis of gender, on the basis of race, and things as such. Now, thirdly, lack of check and balance on their side. Now, you can't refute the idea that God bestowed someone with a unique kind of moral values that place them on the top of that hierarchy. Even if social justice movements and revolutions happen on their side, which is technically impossible, their side has more disparity. People at the top of the social hierarchy will not want to associate with people who are of lower social hierarchy because they are placed like they are a god. Now, there is a notion that this clear social hierarchy is by God, and we cannot change it, that they are only a pawn. Now, they also told you that shaping the world requires a higher level of initiative and cooperation. Now, this is funny that they say that because that actually supports our case. Now, here's why. They indirectly agree that their side lacks initiative and cooperation. And in addition to that, our side will obviously have this high level of initiative and cooperation because they want to change their reality. This will lead to a more lively world and people who would want to have to cooperate with others and have their own sets of initiatives, which will lead to the betterment of the world. Now, thirdly, and my last rebuttal is the preventing of individualism. They said that they prevented individualism. Now, in response to that, we state that the prevention of individualism comes at a cost on their side. This is true because of multiple structural reasons. First is the lack of innovation and incentive to change real issues and problems in the world they live in. Now, that is the benefit of individualism that both sides of the house has to acknowledge, because through that, people would strive to do things like earning money and so on. Now, secondly, individualism let people fight for themselves. Individualism, by definition, is the preference of having independence from everyone else. This will encourage a mindset of cooperation still, but also a sense of competition. Now, individualism at itself is not the worst mindset to have. After all, there is nothing wrong with being independent and it is uncompetitive, as it is a helpful trait in the long run. Now, opposition, I would like to ask, would you want a world where hope is gone, where nihilism runs rampant, and where people won't be punished properly? Now, I would like to end my case, and I firmly stand pro. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. Now let's proceed to the third opposition speaker. Here.
I'd like to start my speech in 1, 2, 3, start. So as the third speaker of opposition, I'd like to start with a rebuttal. Our world has better social justice because recognizing that bad things are bad is a better motivation to change the bad. It results in a zeal in natural leaders. This we see as in every revolution, that instead of damping down the revolution, being in a miserable state of imprisoned in an inscrutable world, fans the frame of revolution or change. So I'd like to next summarize some of our points. First of all, we stated that the world that you are proposing is highly unrealistic. Next, we also talked about the uncooperation and the teamwork. First of all, and work that has the potential to bring a big impact can never be done by individuals. Knowing that one is not important and the world can move on without him or them makes them realize it. So people are going to be willing to work together. But when people think that they are kings and queens and they can do whatever they want, they will run into different in different directions and have different motives. This will have a big impact in cooperation, and people will not be willing to work together, and no progress will be made. Another thing is that the people in your world are going to be stubborn and ignorant. They will be in a bubble of false power and control. Later. Another one is that teamwork is more efficient in our world because people have more faith in group effort instead of individual efforts, right? The next point is that people will try to make change in the world themselves, thinking that they can do it, which is not possible, as you suggest. And they will come across multiple failures and get demotivated. But knowing that you are just a pawn will encourage and motivate you to do better, to go beyond and above, and not just be a pawn, because people don't like to be pawns. You keep saying that social justice is higher in your world, but never explain how. You keep saying our world is depressed, but never explain in ahead ways. As we have already rebutted, and I think I should again explain this, is that in your world, drug addicts and criminals are also going to try to influence the world in a negative way. So I think saying this, I should end my speech. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. Now, to finally conclude the debate for opposition side, we now have the opposition reply speaker. Here.
Yes, give me 1 second. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. So first of all, starting with the fact that in our world, we've clearly explained why social justice will be higher, because of the fact that change will be higher too. Explaining why, continuing on with extensions, is the fact that in our world, we're motivating them from their hearts. In your world, what you're telling them is that, oh wow, you're capable of everything, you can change the world, and this won't result in any sort of change. And I don't know why you can see that, because proposition being too naive, and they were unable to, throughout this entire debate, they were unable to grasp the disappointing truth of human nature, is that without pressure, without a push, we cannot achieve everything. And the push here being that we're telling them to not believe in the sun. in themselves, but everyone wants to believe in themselves, don't you? And thing is that this pushes them to be better, to not be pawns, to rebel against things they don't want, to actually work for it. And this creates true leaders. Like I said, look at any independence war in history. Thing is, what you'll find is that through the dissatisfaction of people, through the hopelessness, people can create hope. Hope is not given. Hope is achieved through society and groups, and that's how we as opposition want to change the world. We are effectively changing it. Where the only thing that proposition can do is sketch a dream world, la la land, where everything is perfect and people are so amazing that they'll take initiative and work together, even though their huge egos are getting in the way, and they will change the world instantaneously. That is just incredible. That is an incredibly insane claim, and the proper opposition has not been able to prove any of the claim, any of the any of the claims they have made. Like we're saying, their world will be too narcissistic, too competitive. They themselves have said their world will be competitive. Do you think too much competition is good? Do you think you should be competing with everyone around you, trying to think everyone's your enemy? No. Like you said, and like we said, groups succeed, and without groups, with so much competition, you won't succeed. And our world clearly and logically and through the good understanding of human nature, we believe that we have already won. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that speech. To conclude this debate, may we now welcome government reply. Hear, hear.
Panel, one last clarification. Am I visible and audible?
Yes to both.
All right, thank you very much for that. Really, really appreciate it. All right. Adjudicators ready, opposition ready. My time will start in 3, 2, 1. Panel, I stand before you to prove to you our final reason why our side has inevitably won the debate today. It is the fact that we have pointed out since the beginning of our speech that side opposition does not even understand the motion or the spirit of the motion. Opposition has constantly cherry-picked the benefits of our side and taken onto theirs without clear justification or any principled arguments on why it is so. That fact in and of itself should weigh their case lower in the debate. Opposition literally does not understand what the notion of being a pawn is. And let me tell you this, it literally means a person being used for others by their own purposes, something that has been defined since PM's speech. How is this exactly motivating for improvement, for change? The notion that everyone is a pawn means that you have no purpose except to be used by others. This is a notion that our side clearly doesn't want to be ingrained within society, which is why the biggest clash within this debate is change. Side opposition told you that there would be more legislative changes, however, we directly counter that. We tell you that legislative changes are only on the basis that the bad can turn good, that people can improve. However, on their side, they believe that people are pawns within society. They cannot change at all. This principled fact already destroys their side of the debate. However, we even prove more counterfactual and structural reasons since PM's speech on why social justice movements are better on our side. Next, on the clash of cooperation. They stated there would be a lack of cooperation on our side of the debate, but this is completely logical. Why? Because even if social justice movements are happening on their side of the debate, which is impossible, their side has more disparity. Why? Because people at the top of the social hierarchy will not want to associate with people of the lower hierarchy. On our side of the debate, ladies and gentlemen, we prove that people can improve, that people are not just pawns, but we are beings that can change, that can be better. Hence why, adjudicator, you should choose the better side of the debate, the government side. With that, I end my case. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that speech. That concludes the debate, and I wish all the best for the teams in this round.
Thank you, panel. Thank you, opposition.
Thank
Had a
you,
really fun
panel.
debate. Thank you.
All right. I think the judges could